Hi, in this video I want to talk about why cognitive dissonance is so hard to break when you are relating with a narcissistic individual. This can be romantic, this can be in your job, this can be a friend, a family member, a political person, or a religious organization. Okay, so the first reason it's so difficult is because someone lied and did it really well. In the love bombing phase, the beginning phase of any narcissistic relationship, the person is going to mirror you. They will mirror your emotions, your dreams, your fears, your values, and what you care about most. And they will create a persona that makes them appear to share those same values, dreams, and to actually be like everything that you are praying for. They will create a persona that leads you to believe that they are aligned with who you are and what you believe and what you are wanting in life. And they do a really good job at it. They will also do a really good job at convincing you that they truly and deeply care about your well being and will continue to do so. Narcissists are highly skilled at feigning empathy. So it can be really confusing down the road when the narcissist has flipped and done a 180 and the abuse has started, and you're like, wait, what just happened? Like, I'm pretty sure this person was super loving and super caring and aligned with everything I wanted, and we had deep conversations about this, just to make sure that we were a good fit and I was safe with this person. Um, that moment can be really hard and really scary and incredibly confusing, and that's when the gaslighting starts. That's when the self-gaslighting starts, and it's in those moments that we start making excuses for them, like, oh, well, I guess, yeah, this is what happens in these kinds of relationships, or, nobody's perfect. This person's trauma is showing up, which, yes, that happens, especially in romantic relationships when we get deeper into commitment. These, our old wounds start to show up. So it's very easy to think that, okay, this person's acting out because there's a little trauma burp happening. And you love them, right? Like, you had a whole experience of them. Your five senses that help you grasp and move with reality around you had led you to believe that this person is on your side. And when that shifts and changes, it can be incredibly disorienting. And what happens in those moments is that, yeah, the cognitive dissonance sets in, and we don't believe it at first because it doesn't make sense to the paradigm that we have created with this person, or that this person has created with and for us. So our brains will go into cognitive dissonance mode and make excuses and try to rationalize this behavior so that we don't feel the pain of the betrayal that is beginning to happen in front of our own eyes. This is also how cults attract followers and then entrap their victims. And cults can be a cult of one person. Many narcissistic abuse survivors describe their relationship as being in a cult. I can agree with that. It's also very similar to any, legit cult, any community cult, religious cult. The same things tend to apply. And then another thing happens when we go into cognitive dissonance is that our judge of character becomes threatened, right? Like, when we realize that we were wrong, that's really scary, because what that means is that we weren't able to see the signs, and that we're not actually safe, and that we weren't ever safe, and we might not be safe in the future. And how can we trust ourselves again? All of these questions are extremely hard to ask oneself, and it's a lot easier to deflect and deny what is happening in front of our own eyes. Because often to our human ego, being wrong is an extremely hard thing to admit. We often go into shame. There is usually an innate fear of punishment for being wrong that was developed when we were children. And the implications of making a mistake like that can be really terrifying. We all like to live in a paradigm where we are safe and where we are cared for, where we are loved and respected. And when this 180 flip starts to happen, when the mask drops, that challenges that worldview. And then all of a sudden, if we are to look it in the face, we realize that we are in danger. So oftentimes the knee-jerk reaction in human beings is to try to do anything to fabricate an excuse or a reason why this person is behaving that way. Because inside, we are desperately hoping that they are going to revert to how they were in the beginning of the relationship. So think for a minute. I'm sure it's happened quite a few times in your life. If you've related to other human beings, how many times have you met somebody? Doesn't matter if they're like, a love interest or a friend or a leader in some way, and you absolutely fall in love with them. And a lot of that falling in love with them is because you feel really seen by them, you feel understood by them, you feel supported by them, they share your values, they make promises to uplift you and help you, and sometimes they seem to be the only ones that understand your struggle. And then at some point, their behavior starts to change. And instead of accepting that this behavior is changing for good, as in it's not going to change back, you keep waiting and holding out for the initial version of them to return. This is definitely most common in dating scenarios where people put on their best face and their best personality in order to attract and secure a relationship. And then once that relationship is secured, we all get cozy. And we all do this. Like, we all get cozy. Our, human bullshit starts to show. And so that's why it's really easy to make excuses for another person if they're narcissistic, because we're like, oh, okay, well, we all have this stuff. It's going to, it's okay. Like, they'll see it. This is where human growth happens. The problem is that with, a person who is narcissistic, that's not going to change. They are not going to go back to how they were during the love bombing phase. That was all a facade. It was all orchestrated. They created this persona in order to get you hooked and to get you invested. And while we're talking investments, there's a term called sunk cost fallacy. If you have provided a lot of love and energy and devotion to a person or an organization, it's going to be really hard to leave that relationship once things change. And this is just like whenever you invest so much of yourself, like your time and your money, into something, and it starts to lose. Like, it's really hard to pull out and cut your losses. Like, you keep hoping that it's going to turn around and that the investments that you made are going to pay off. And so what happens is that, you continue to lose and lose and lose and lose. And you will probably get little gains. What happens is that oftentimes once you appear like you're going to pull out, then all of a sudden the breadcrumbing starts. Like, the narcissistic person or organization will be like, oh, but here's a little something. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, good. Like, it's starting to turn around. And then you'll reinvest more. And this is one of the main plays that narcissistic people and organizations use to keep people trapped into their system. Breadcrumbing like this, like the abuse and the reward cycle, also hijacks your dopamine system and keeps you literally chemically addicted to the perpetrator. There are scientific studies that are quite alarming. I've talked about this in other videos, and I'll link it in the description below. And understanding how this works can be a huge key player in helping to break cognitive dissonance. But I will say that cognitive dissonance is incredibly hard to break because you've got the sunk cost fallacy, you have your body's chemicals actually working against you, you have your own empathy and belief in the good of human beings actually working against you in these situations. And that is incredibly heartbreaking to realize, and a lot of us aren't going to want to realize it. A lot of us can't even realize it because it is so far out of our own paradigm and worldview and how we operate as human beings that it literally does not register in our brains. Like, we can't comprehend that somebody would take advantage of another person's empathy and goodwill, right? But we have to realize that some people will, and they do. So when you start seeing a person not honoring their agreements or changing who they are in front of your eyes, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you must be vigilant and wake up. It is absolutely heartbreaking, and it will feel like a crack is happening in your minds and you won't know what you're looking at, and it's incredibly confusing. So when you experience that level of confusion, that right there is all you need to know to take some steps back and to really reevaluate the situation that you're in. Do some research on cognitive dissonance and get really honest and really real with yourself. It's going to feel like tough love, and it's going to be really hard to look at. It's like the hardest thing for human beings to look at, especially, as we see now in political cults, like on all sides, or religious cults on all sides. Like, we've all seen atrocities committed at the hands of cult leaders, and people just don't want to see it. It hurts too much, especially when they have invested so much of their love and their belief. And usually the biggest problem is that we associate an aspect of our identity with these cult leaders, even if it's a leader of one, even if it's just a narcissistic friend or lover. We have invested our belief in that person. And so to be wrong about that person, what does that say about us, right? Like, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be fooled. It is okay to feel ashamed and afraid and angry and disgusted at what has taken place. A lot of times we're taught to avoid those emotions, especially of anger and disgust, because they're not, proper, or they're negative emotions. However, those feelings can really be strong guideposts in our lives. They're also extremely uncomfortable feelings to feel. But I will say that waking up to the abuses committed by certain people in my life that I believed in and that I had vouched for, experiencing the anger and the disgust inside of myself helped break the spell even that much further. So if you are grappling with cognitive dissonance in any sort of cult-like relationship in your life, and someone's changing their tune, they're not what they had appeared to be in the beginning, cut your losses while you can, step back and just observe. Write down their behavior if you have to, so you can go back and read it. A lot of times our brain will gloss over things, or do the rose-colored glasses effect, and we will willingly forget the abuses or the harm that these people have caused. It's wild how this happens. I did it, and then then you go back later and you actually read what you were experiencing at the time. It's like, wow, yeah, that's a huge red flag, and I should have left then. But my brain was doing this thing that was causing me to ignore what I was seeing with my very own eyes and what I was feeling with my very own heart and my body. I knew it was wrong. I just kept wanting it to change for the better because I wanted to believe that that's the kind of world that I lived in. And I wanted to believe in my good judgment. Sometimes that's not enough. And it's important that we are clear and open eyed and recognize what we are really experiencing and to trust our gut with this. Breaking your cognitive dissonance is the first step in removing yourself from a dangerous situation and finding healing and finding yourself again and reestablishing trust and love within and for yourself. I hope you found this message helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Much love to you.